Welcome to the Lit Up Lightworker Podcast, bringing you fun and soulful interviews with spiritual teachers with the aim of tuning you in and lighting you up. You can access all episodes of the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. And be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos and interviews all about finding and following your life purpose. My name is George Lizos. I'm a spiritual teacher, intuitive, the author of Be the Guru, Lightworkers Gotta Work, and the #1 best-selling Protect Your Light. And today I have with me Anjie Cho. Anjie Cho is a creator of holistic spaces, specifically focused on designing interiors and teaching Feng Shui and meditation. She's guided thousands of people to harmonize their living spaces through the ancient practice of Feng Shui. Anjie is a Feng Shui expert at the Spruce and has been featured in dozens of publications, including the New York Times, MindBodyGreen and BuzzFeed. Anjie is co-founder of the Mindful Design Feng Shui School and host of the Holistic Spaces podcast. Anjie, welcome to the Lit Up Lightworker Podcast.
Thank you so much, George. It's so nice to meet you.
It's so lovely to have you here. And for those of you just listening and watching, I first found out about Anjie in a membership, in a Flower Essences membership that I'm part in called Flower Evolution from a company called Lotus Way. And every single month, she gives us a different Feng Shui ritual to help us connect more deeply with the flower essence we're working each month. And I just loved Anjie's practices every single month. And since I love Feng Shui, like it's #1 modality I'm obsessed with and have gotten me on my spiritual path, I thought it was a perfect opportunity to bring her on the podcast and share with you the magic that I experience with her every single month. So Anjie, before we get started with what we're going to talk about today, which is harmonizing the different rooms in our house according to Feng Shui, I want to hear a little bit about your story of what got you started working with Feng Shui.
Sure. Thank you for asking. So I had practiced in the field of architecture for many years, and I also was going through my Saturn return. And if your listeners don't know, that's around your late 20s or like 29, 30, and you start to relook at the structures in your life. And I didn't know I was going through my Saturn return, but I was going through a lot. And I actually took a trip to Thailand and had an epiphany, and I just realized I needed to change my life and really incorporate more spirituality because I was really unhappy. So I came back to New York City and I decided to study meditation and yoga. And then I naturally gravitated towards Feng Shui because I was like, how do I bring this into what I do for the world? How do I incorporate more spirituality in what I spend most of my day doing? And so I took some classes, and I was really delighted to learn that there was much more to Feng Shui than just moving furniture around, that it was a really, really deep practice, and it was very healing for me. And you know, George, I never wanted to be my own business owner. I never wanted to like write a book or have a podcast or write for a blog or any of this. But once I decided to follow my heart and study Feng Shui and do something that was just for me, that I love, the whole universe opened up for me, and everything just started like just literally like presenting itself to me. So I've been really fortunate to have a lot of opportunities to explore my gifts, and I attribute it all to Feng Shui.
Wow, I love this story. And I also, what I told you before we got started is I love the school of Feng Shui that you studied, because what people don't know, there are different schools of Feng Shui. It's a classic school that was created in China, which is where Feng Shui originated from. But there is a Western rendition as well, which is called Black Hat Sect. But you also have your own Feng Shui school as well. So I was wondering whether you can share a little bit about your Feng Shui background as it relates to the different schools, but also the Feng Shui style that you created yourself.
Okay, sure. So yes, there are dozens of schools of Feng Shui, just like there's dozens of chocolate chip cookie recipes, right? And I studied the BTB school, which is either called Black Hat more currently it's called Black Sect. And it is a more modern perspective. There's dozens of different schools, like you said, the classical schools, there's Flying Star, there's Western School of Feng Shui, there's Pyramid School. I think actually Pyramid might be the most modern, and I don't really know much about it, but I do teach Feng Shui. I have a partner, and we have a certification program, but we teach Black Sect actually. So we don't teach our own school. We teach the Black Sect, and we modeled it after the school that we studied in, the BTB Master's program, which was a 3-year program that has since dissolved. But we received the blessings from my teachers to continue the teachings. And so, the main difference would be that the Black Sect, BTB, looks at the flow of energy from the doorway, or how we look at how energy enters a space, and we have that as a higher priority over the directions, the 4 directions. So while the 4 directions are still there, it's not the most important thing, because the way that I look at it is that we live in the modern world where we have lighting, we have we're not dependent on nature as much, or our orientation to the sun. However, those things are so important, but also there's a beauty in like the east direction always moves with us. Like, it doesn't just have to be like the north, south, east direction magnetically, but how can we always face south? How can we always face the sun? And how we have the ability to shift our orientation energetically, and it's connected to nature, yet we're not constrained by nature, where that was much more important, centuries ago when Feng Shui was developed.
Yes, and I love the way these the Western Feng Shui modalities work, where you get in the house and that's the entrance point of energy, and that's where you apply the Bagua map on the house, and you determine the different elements and colors and areas of life, etc. Now, so what we're going to do today is so exciting. We're going to go room by room, and you're going to give us some tips as to the kind of energy, the vibe, the colors, the elements, the shapes even, that we should bring into this house. Because something that I learned early on in my own training was that, like, for example, if you're in the kitchen, you want bright colors and like strong energy, whereas if you're in the bedroom, you don't want like reds or oranges. So we're gonna do something like that to give people an idea as to how they can harmonize the vibe of their rooms in alignment with Feng Shui, so they can live more fulfilling and productive lives. So shall we get started? I'm thinking with living room, because usually this is the first room that people meet when they come into their house, unless there is another room that you had in mind for the first one.
I actually would. I would say the front door, which is even before the living room.
Let's go with that.
Yeah, the front door, the entry, we call that the mouth of qi. So qi is the word for energy in Chinese, and there's different variations of that but it's like prana, and it's life force energy. And so we look at the importance of how energy enters the space. So the qi enters your home primarily, or any space primarily, through the formal front door. So whether you use that front door or not, the formal front door, like the official front door, is where the majority of the qi enters your space. And doors are also related to the mouth. And so it's a portal for energy, and it's a way that we receive and also communicate. So the front door is one of the most important places to look at when it comes to Feng Shui, or the front entry, the foyer, which often gets forgotten, right? Because it's a transitional space, but it's how you connect to the outside world. So so we wanted to talk about like what are some pointers to look at in the front door, as well as colors or anything else to pay attention to. So I would say the most important thing to do at the front door is to make sure that you're caring for it. Like, make sure that it's tidy, that you're using the front door. So you may have like a side door, especially in the US, a lot of people have side doors or back doors that they enter into a space. And it's really important to actually use your front door and to activate the chi, because if it's closed all the time, that means the chi can't come in. And it's also important to look at the lighting. So lighting is fire energy. And if we have a dark entry, then it's as if you're harder to see, because your front door is like your face to the world. And just like when we start, like, so we met on Zoom and I didn't have my light on, but I turned the light on and you're so beautifully lit, your face is so beautifully lit. Like there's an importance to being able to being available so people can see your face, and to have your face brightly lit, and to have the light shining on you so the world can see your gifts.
I love that. And I mean, I've been hearing that, okay, you should paint the front door red just to bring in the fire energy. This makes so much sense. Now, what about people who live in flats? Like I live like the 4th floor. Like, of course, my entrance is important, but do I have to do something for the main entrance of the building? How do we resolve that?
Yeah, I live in a flat too, or an apartment. So the front door doesn't technically belong to you. It's like a more communal space. And there's only so much control you have over that. So if you have the opportunity to affect it, that's great. Like for instance, I have a friend that does the flower arrangements for his lobby. Like that would be a way to activate the chi, but you have to do the best you can with what you have. So if you can't really change the front door, you that's okay. But your apartment door is really part of your chi and your jurisdiction. So you sometimes, like if you live in a flat, you can't change the outside of your front door, right? But you can clean it. You can make sure once you go inside your front door that the foyer is brightly lit and clear and clutter free. And then you can also add a doormat to create to claim that chi, to attract chi to your front door.
I love that, and I already have some ideas as to how I can make mine more bright and more tidy. Okay, so we come into the house and we're in the living room, let's say. So what are some pointers for activating the energy and harmonizing the energy of our living rooms?
So the living room, if you just think about like that that phrase, living room, it's a room for living. And then often if you think about the activities that happen in that room, it's really helpful. So Feng Shui is interesting because I think with all energetic modalities, when you really think about it, they're just common sense, right? But you like, what are the activities involved in the living room? And so people tend to meet there maybe with friends to gather. It's a more public space, and then you gather there with your family and you spend time together. So it's really a room to live and to invite. So it's helpful if you can arrange the furniture so that it's welcoming. So maybe having it oriented so that it's not all facing a television, or that it's inviting. And then to make sure there's enough seating for everybody in the home. Because for instance, if you like are feeling lonely, I mean, a lot of people are feeling very lonely right now because of the state of, the pandemic and everything. But if you also only have one chair in your living room, you haven't created an opportunity or space for any kind of friendship in your life or any kind of community. So creating a space for people to come visit, comfortable spaces. And then if we're talking about colors in general, like color theory and Feng Shui, one thing that my teachers always taught was like, well, what color are you most attracted to? So there's like general rules on some colors that may be less ideal. But if you love it, then it's totally okay, because we all have our own cultural associations. Like for instance, like in more traditional Chinese culture, one would wear black to a wedding, whereas in the US or in Western culture, you wear white, you wear white when you get married. So it really depends. But generally, I would go for a color that you love. And then also having colors, like if you're just kind of starting from anything like a teal or blue and green, those invite wood element, those can be healing colors and are the color of related to family. So that could be really supportive.
I love that. I love how first of all, how it all makes sense, and how if we look at our own personal symbolism and our needs and what we desire, we can get an idea as to how we can create a space that mirrors what we want. I've always used Feng Shui as like a manifestation modality, essentially. And those tips are just perfect to help people start creating some mindful manifestation space in their living rooms. Okay, so let's move into kitchen. So I've heard different things about kitchen. Well, I've heard that you shouldn't have the fridge next to the oven, for example, and the stove. So can you give us some tips, some pros and cons about those kind of arrangements as well?
Sure. So that's where the different schools come into play, because the BTB school doesn't really have any kind of strict rules on placements, adjacencies of like the water or the stove or the refrigerator. But we do place a priority again on that energy, right? Which means how is energy coming in, which we call the commanding position. And so the stove is a very important place in your home. It represents the modern hearth. It's where we gather. It's how we feed ourselves, right? So if you have a stove and you cook, you can nourish yourself and then do well in the world. Because we know now, I mean, we've always known this, but it's more of an emphasis now that our health, if we don't have our health, we don't have anything. We really, really need to be in good health. So having a great, well-functioning stove, making sure all the burners are functioning and working, making sure the stove is very clean, and then the position of the stove. So ideally, you want to be set up so that when you're cooking at the stove, you could see the entry to the kitchen, and it's not behind you, because when you can't see the entry of the kitchen, or if you're directly in line with the entry of the kitchen, you are the cook is essentially in a dangerous position. So we've been living in an activated level of fight or flight in the past few years, and so putting yourself in this position where you can't see the door or you're directly in line with the door also greatly activates your fight or flight response in your adrenals and your stress levels. And so that energy goes into the food that you're cooking, right? And that gets absorbed. And so it becomes more and more problematic, and it trickles down into other areas of your life. So ideally, you want to have your stove set up so you can see the door. Now, this isn't always possible to eat. It's not easy to move your stove. So what you can do, if that's not something that's doable for you, you can set up a mirror, or like a little convex mirror, like a little rear view mirror that you could see behind you while you're cooking. And just like with the stove, it's really great to be aware of what's happening. Like one tip I love to give most people is, usually when we go to our stove, we have a favorite one. Like, George, can you think of your favorite burner?
My favorite burner where? What do you mean?
Like on your stove? Like, do you always use
Oh,
one
yes,
burner?
I always have like one that I usually go to.
Right. So most people are like, oh yeah, for me, I always use a front right burner. And so then because the stove represents your wealth and your health and your prosperity, I really challenge people to, instead of just beelining towards your favorite burner and using it all the time, take a mindful moment every morning and just to make a conscious decision, like, I'm going to use a different burner. But practicing that every morning, which only takes a few moments, allows us to kind of reprogram our brains to just do that everywhere else in our life. Like instead of just defaulting to the easiest task, how can I look at things a little bit differently to open up opportunities for myself?
I haven't thought of this before. That's so interesting. And I'm now thinking about it. The stove that I use, the burner that I use, is the one on the love and relationships corner, the further to the right one. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, what if I activated the wealth side? Or what if I activated a different side as well? Like, I'm going to try this tomorrow. And what I also wanted to say regarding the hearth, you talked about it's the center of the house. And I'm thinking back to my own training as a Greek pagan priest. The ancient Greeks honored the hearth goddess Hestia, was all about the center of the house and the eternal flame that brings the house together, that brings the family together, that is the heart of the house essentially. And it's funny how we translated that eventually, because society evolves, into the kitchen and into the stove, and how timeless this custom has been. And also, really loved your tip about the convex mirror. I remember when you taught that in the Flower Evolution program, and I realized, oh my God, I work here and I have the door right behind me. I can't see the door. So I'm a good student, I'm an A+ student, Anjie. I got my convex mirror, it's right there in front of me, and I can see exactly what's going on behind me. So thank you for that tip as well.
Oh, you're welcome. And yeah, I really love that idea of the modern hearth too, especially with a lot of modern kitchens. There's like an open, a lot of homes now have an open kitchen design with an island. And what people immediately do is beeline towards the island, or, you beeline towards like where you gather to eat, especially, with all cultures. And so, it's an important place in the home. It's like the heart of the home. So the stove is really important.
So beautiful. Okay, let's move into the bedroom. Something people again we spend so much time in the bedroom. And I realized actually last year my dad was suffering from cancer, and we decided to do some energetic clearing and investigation in the house. So because I do a lot of dowsing, I found out geopathic stress. 2 lines of geopathic stress crossing over his bed in his lungs, exactly where he had the cancer. And of course I bought an alpha waves like frequency gadget, and we used it to eradicate it. But we spend so much time, and if there is problem like energetic problems in the house, in the bedroom, that can potentially harm our health. So can you give us some tips around harmonizing the bedroom?
Yeah, I hope your dad's better now.
Sadly, he passed away last year,
Oh,
but
I'm
it's fine.
sorry.
It's all good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the bedroom is quite important. As you mentioned, we spend so many hours in our bedroom, and most of that time is spent asleep. So we're in a passive yin state. So yin is the receptive. We're like an open cup, very receptive and open while we're sleeping. And also we need to sleep well in order to recharge and for our bodies to recuperate and rejuvenate, so we can spend our waking time productively as well. We need that balance of yin and yang. So with the bedroom, it represents you, because you spend so much time there. Like it is you, it's your chi. And so any kind of work that you do is very powerful in the bedroom, because it's directly affecting you. And also, if you think about your room, it's your most private space, right? Like, no, you don't share. You typically only share your bedroom with the people who have the bedroom with you. That's it. But you generally don't open it to the public as much. I think it's interesting how things are shifting a little bit now with Zoom and people working from home, that we're inviting more energies into our bedroom. So like, I always have to kind of create protections around that a little bit, because it's not something that as a society we've evolved to do. So that's something to pay attention to. Like, you're inviting people into your more private space that we're not accustomed to. And so paying attention to that is important. Also acknowledging that creating a very supportive space in your bedroom is so helpful, because if we can't sleep well, it affects our health and everything else. It trickles down to everything else. So some things to pay attention to with your bed is also that commanding position that I mentioned. So ideally, when you're laying in bed, like say you're laying in bed, leaning against the headboard, that you can see the door without directly being in line with the door. So you don't really want your feet pointing straight out the door. Like with the door open, you don't want anyone to see directly at you, because you don't want to be in that line of chi, which can be disruptive, and it comes like rushing towards you. And you want to have command of your room. You want to be able to see any of the energy coming in. You want to be able to not be surprised. And when you're sleeping in an unconscious state, your mind still is aware that it can't see the front door, that anyone could come in and maybe harm you. So even though consciously, like nobody's coming in, if you were alone and you heard something, you would be terrified, and you wouldn't want to be situated so that you can't see who's coming in. So really being able to be diagonal from the door is ideal. And if you can't do that, you can set up a mirror. Usually I like to use those standing mirrors and situate it so that when you're lying in bed, you can see a reflection of the door. So energetically, that kind of corrects it. And then like some things that people can in general pay attention to is what's happening under your bed. A lot of people store a lot of things under their bed. So pay attention. Like, do you have letters from exes under your bed? Do you have shoes? Do you have, I don't know, like unfinished projects that make you feel guilty? Whatever it is, like, are there things that are emotionally charged under your bed or energetically charged under your bed? Because you are sleeping you're sleeping over all this stuff, and you're receiving the energies of those items, and the accumulation of whatever energy is underneath you directly affects you, because you're like literally sleeping over it for hours every night. And so I always encourage people to minimize what's under their bed. Ideally, you want to have the chi be able to flow all around you smoothly, but you can also, if you have to have something, keep soft bed sleep related items like pillows and blankets. And then color wise, in general, they do say that if feng shui, if we're going to give a general thing, like you mentioned this earlier, and not necessarily super active colors like fiery colors, because that can keep you up at night, especially if you have trouble sleeping. But if you don't have trouble sleeping and you'd like to have a more passionate, fiery, romantic life, maybe bringing in subtle accents of red will really activate it. But in general, like neutral colors, like earthy colors, are very supportive about self-care. You could use more like neutral, like not neutral, light blues and greens that are more healing and rejuvenating. Purples or eggplants can be more a little bit more supportive. So you also need to touch into your heart and see what color resonates with you too. That's usually the best answer.
Yes, mine is soft green and it feels so healing. But I remember a few years ago, my brother decided to paint his room like bright orange. And I'm like, you're making a huge mistake. A huge mistake. He could not sleep. He would sleep like in the living room every single day until he eventually listened to me and we dyed it a neutral color, like yellow, at least.
How old is he? That's like something a young kid would do.
He was 15 years old at the time.
Oh, okay.
So he was a kid, and that was his favorite football team's color. So he was in that phase. But I'm like,
yes. Well, that's something like parents can watch out for their kids. Like if you give kids an option to pick their paint color, they will pick like a very bright color that will keep them up, and that's probably not what you want as a parent. So my recommendation is to kind of like maybe ask them like, what color do you want? Just verbally, like they could say maybe orange, blue, whatever. And then you pick out 3 very muted versions of it for them to pick from, or else they'll just pick, they will pick the brightest color.
Yeah, and you go with pastels, of course.
Yes, because you don't, unless you want your kids to be up all night.
I think most parents would strongly disagree with that. Okay, let's talk about the bathroom now, which I think most people want to avoid dealing with the bathroom in the first place. And I think it's so important that we actually paint extra attention to it, because it's kind of, the energy is a little bit opposing to the kitchen, where in the kitchen you create and then in the bathroom you distract. So can you give us some tips around that?
Yeah, so when Feng Shui was developed, if you think about it, bathrooms were a place that you really wanted to keep away from the home. It could cause illness. You had to really be careful. There was a lot of, because it's a place where you let go of human waste and you cleanse yourself. But also in modern bathrooms now, I mean, we have modern plumbing, so it's more of a place that we can look at as a place to rejuvenate and to purify and cleanse our bodies as well. So, but in Feng Shui, it's also a place where water comes in and out. So that's where some of the energetic issues come from in Feng Shui. So yeah, I think it makes sense to definitely pay more attention to the bathroom than you might be inclined to do, but to see how your bathroom can equate to a place where you take care of yourself. And you want to definitely keep it clean and tidy. And actually I love the bathroom because I love taking baths. So I think it's a very relaxing space. So some ways that you can work with it is, in general, you may not be able to change the color of your bathroom, but you can add in accents. So if you are changing the color of your bathroom, usually white is a great color because it's related to purity and cleanliness. But also, if you want to look at the 5 element cycle, it's a water area. So water is water can be best used by wood element. So having either living green plants or using green or blue accents can be helpful. And if you have a bathroom in a problematic bagua area, like maybe the center of your home, which is a problematic bagua area for your for a bathroom, then you could use accents with the color red, because red is very protective, just like you talked about. Some people like to paint their doors red because it's a very protective, vital color. It's a color of life, energy, and blood.
I love that. Thank you so much about that. And let's move into the other final room in the house that most people like to completely disregard, which is the garage. So, and I'm guilty with that as well, because I remember in one of the lessons you taught us in Flower Evolution was look at the places where you store things. Do you have something that you shouldn't be there? And I'm avoiding this lesson this month. And I have avoided this lesson, which reminds me I need to go back to it. So can you give us some tips around storage spaces and why they're so important?
Okay, definitely. Yeah. So, well, I live in New York City, so I don't have a garage, nor do I have a car, but I do have storage. So if we look at storage areas in general, and especially maybe ones that you're neglecting, it is helpful to kind of see where they're happening in your life. If you know about the Feng Shui Bagua map, you can see what area that's happening. There's 8 different areas around a center, and sometimes you'll see oh, I have this, drawer in my relationship area that I'm totally neglecting, and see how that may reflect upon how you approach relationships, whether it's a romantic relationship or a partnership, but it could also mean your relationship with your mother or your feminine side. So it's interesting to explore the Bagua map in that respect. But, I think with storage areas, number one, it's good to be gentle with yourself and not too judgmental. and take it like one step at a time. Like George, if you're not looking forward to your closet or your garage, maybe you can just decide to do just like 9 minutes. 9 is an auspicious number in Feng Shui, or 9 minutes a day, or maybe you do give away 9 items a week. So something that's manageable and achievable. And the 9 is an auspicious number to help you complete that process. But it's also good to just like notice like why it is that you really are have reservations about looking in that area, and acknowledging either like, okay, I'm totally not prepared to do this, and that's okay, or asking for help, or just diving in step by step.
I love how the house is a mirror of our inner self and what's going on within us, because when we follow the prompts you've just given us, we can just find like traumas or fears or limiting beliefs that are coming up, telling us, okay, I have this corner in my relationship area of the house that's completely neglected. What does that mean? What have I neglected about myself? And then you start thinking, and then you go back and realize, and I need to do some thinking as well here, because I recondoed my entire house but my storage spaces. So I need to go there and figure out what's happening. Anjie, thank you so much for sharing all these tips with us. Can you please share a little bit about where can people get in touch with you and how they can work with you?
Sure. I teach Feng Shui at mindfuldesignschool.com, and we have mini courses and a certification program. And then I also have a podcast called the Holistic Spaces Podcast, where we chat all about Feng Shui. And you can also find me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is at Anjie Cho with a J.
Anjie, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was such a lovely conversation. Thank you so much, and I look forward to chatting more soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.